Okay, well, my name is Yusuf K, and I'm here to present Advanced Exercise Physiology course presentation, our first CAP, and I'll be showing the breakdown of fatty acids and glucose into ATP as a kind of a undergraduate course. So the breakdown occurs such as this. This is the basic diagram that I've drawn, and what it's going to tell you is that cells require a constant supply of energy to generate and maintain the biological order that keeps them alive. So I'm going to kind of trace the major steps in glucose breakdown to show how ATP is produced. Stage 1 is the enzymatic breakdown of food molecules, which is digestion. Food is broken down right here into monomer subunits, proteins into amino acids, for example, polysaccharides into sugars, fats into fatty acids. And after digestion, the small organic molecules derived from food enter the cytosol of the cell, where the gradual oxidation begins. Oxidation occurs in two further stages. This stage in the cytosol ends in the major energy converting organelle, the mitochondria. So this occurs in the mitochondria. Glycolysis from each molecule of glucose is broken down into smaller molecules of pyruvate. During pyruvate formation, two types of activated carrier molecules are produced, ATP and NADH. The pyruvate then passes from the cytosol into the mitochondria. There, each pyruvate molecule is converted into CO2, plus a 2-carbon acetyl group, which becomes attached to coenzyme acetyl-CoA, forming acetyl-CoA, and which is also another activating carrier molecule. The acetyl group in acetyl-CoA is linked to coenzyme A through a high-energy linkage and is therefore easily transferable to other molecules. After its transfer, the 4-carbon molecule oxaloate, I always have trouble with that one, the acetyl group enters into a series of reactions called the citric acid cycle. So the citric acid cycle occurs right here, and this acetyl group is oxidized into CO2 in these reactions, and large amounts of the electron carrier NADH are produced. Finally, the high energy electrons from NADH are passed along the electron transport chain. So the electron transport chain is right here, and this is within the mitochondrial inner membrane. And this is where the energy released by the transfer is used to drive the process that produces ATP and also consumes molecular oxygen. So it's in these final steps that most of the energy released by oxidation is harnessed to produce most of the cell's ATP. A total of 34 ATP are produced. The net is 32 ATP because 2 have to drive the formation. And so that is the basic breakdown of glucose. Now this kind of applies to exercise in the real world, maybe that occurs after 10 seconds. So aerobic exercise, because the body needs to break down glucose in order to sustain it. It's past the 10-second mark, it's not anaerobic, and therefore glucose is required. So in a banana or whatever you've consumed that day, external digestion is what we're talking about. Now my next example is going to discuss a little bit of fatty acid breakdown. So fatty acid breakdown occurs when B oxidation produces NADH and FADH. Basically cutting the fatty acid molecule into 2-carbon HCl fragments. Citric acid cycle then begins by degrading acetyl-CoA into carbon dioxide and hydrogen atoms. Hydrogen atoms oxidize via the electron transport chain. So that's what you'll see right there. So the basic use of fatty acids occurs such in long distance running. So that's kind of the real world application to it. And so that's what I kind of wanted to break down. And so this is going to yield a total of about 460 ATP. So you can see the ATP here are produced. And that is a lot more ATP than the first glucose breakdown. It's highly, you have a lot of energy. You can stay in it for almost a long time, almost as long as you want, almost an infinite amount of time, but obviously not forever, but it's your longest lasting reserve. So it's a multi-step process, like I said, in which fatty acids are broken down into various tissues to produce energy. So it involves first getting the fatty acids into the cytosol and then transferring it to the mitochondria where beta oxidation takes place. So I'm going to go into a little bit more about beta oxidation. It involves activation of the acyl-CoA by conjugation with the coenzyme A in the cytosol and conversion to acylcarnitine. Oh, that's the hand. Okay. This is transported across the mitochondrial membrane and conversion back to acyl-CoA. So here you can see the whole breakdown. This is kind of showing some of the glucose portion, but we're going to stick with the fatty acid. So the glucose is kind of a separate process, but they are, related in the fact that your body does have to kind of go based on one energy source. So beta oxidation, like I said, is also a repeated sequence of 4 enzyme activities that results in the release of acyl-CoA unit, a molecule of FADH2, and a molecule of NADH+. Basically, the acyl-CoA enters the mitochondria tricarbolic acid or citric acid cycle, where it's oxidized to CO2 and H2O, with the generation of additional FADH, NADH, and H+. The NADH and FADH produced by both fatty acid oxidation and the citric acid cycle are used by the electron transport chain to produce ATP. Like I said, about 460. So that's the breakdown. That's basically what I wanted to talk about today. If you have any questions, let me know. I do consider myself, a working expert, not perfect, but I do understand them enough to, conduct a class such as this. So I hope it was satisfactory. Thank you.